What did David Bowie think about David Bowie?
Well, all right. I find that I'm a person who can take on the guises of different people that I meet. I can switch accents in seconds of meeting somebody, and I can adopt their accent. I've always found that I collect. I'm a collector. And I've always just seemed to collect personalities, ideas. I have a hodgepodge philosophy, which really is very minimal. Very
Do you
little
believe in God, for
my,
instance?
What?
Do you believe in God?
I believe in an energy form, but I'm not. I wouldn't I wouldn't like to put a name to it.
Do you indulge in any form of worship?
Life. I love life very much indeed.
You split people down the middle, don't you, a lot? That is to say that people are hostile to you, or they're totally indifferent.
Oh,
You don't
absolutely.
want to know about
Yeah.
that. What kind of reaction do you get from the people who are violently in favour of you? I mean, do you get fan mail?
Yes, a lot.
What is it? Scabrous or dangerous or interesting or exciting?
It's very sexy.
In what way?
Well, I seem to draw a lot of fantasies out of people on a lot of the fan mail I get. A lot of it is awfully nice. I mean, they say, how's your baby and how's your wife and what's your mum's name and things like that. But some of them are worth framing.
Can you tell us about one or two of the framed ones?
No, I couldn't really. No, they really are quite heavy. Heavy-duty letters they are.
Heavy-duty?
Heavy-duty.
Duty.
So I drop me T's sometimes.
Welcome, nice to see you.
Thank you.
So you've got a lot of explaining to do.
Yes.
I feel like I always feel I should interview like that character Peter Cook does, you know? What is all this prancing about a stage and trappings and all of that? But you don't have the trappings that you've had in the past. You're a little more conventional.
Yeah, at this moment.
What happened?
We did the Diamond Dogs tour and took it from New York to Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
And I felt that was enough, really, rather than come back with the same thing. I wanted to give myself an opportunity just to work with the band.
Yeah. So a lot of the glitter is gone that we associate with you, and you've got an entirely new person now.
No, you haven't.
Où sont les glitz de yesteryear, or something like that.
No.
Is the offstage Bowie likely to surprise people? I have had the weirdest reactions from people who know you're going to be on. Some of them say they'd be scared to sit and talk with you. Some people said you would bite my neck.
It's not
very peculiar kind of thing.
It's what you want, really, isn't it? And what do you think I'm like?
Well, I've only met you over the phone and a little bit backstage, and to me you seemed like, I hope this doesn't insult you, a working actor.
That's right, that's very good.
You know, I mean, what are you drawing?
It's therapeutic.
No, you know, some people thought, there's a lady who said, I don't know if I'd want to meet him. He would make me very nervous. I have a feeling he's into black magic and that sort of thing. And other people see you as just a very skillful performer who changes from time to time from one thing to another.
Yeah. Well, both of that is...
All of the above? You'll buy that?
I'm a person of diverse interests, but not...
Sure.
I'm not really very academic, but I glit from one thing to another a lot.
Yeah. Glit.
It's like flit, but it's the 70s version.
One letter later in the alphabet. This incredible picture, it's very striking. The first time you see it, I remember the first time this album appeared in a record store window, and I could see it actually stopping traffic on the sidewalk. This is the picture you send to the draft board, obviously, saying that. Keep this boy around.
I've only just got that.
I didn't know I was going to say that. How did that come about, that whole idea and that very painting?
Let me see. Well, it's an artist from Belgium called Guy Pollard who did a book called Rock Dreams. That, yeah. Then I nicked the... well, I didn't nick the book, but I saw the book at Mick Jagger's house. And I nicked the idea of doing a cover.
What does nicked mean?
Oh, stolen. So.
Stole the idea. Does this make you nervous to sit without your band and with everything and just to chat a little bit?
Oh, let's carry on talking. Don't ask me that.
Oh.
Otherwise, I'll wonder.
Oh, you'll start
I'd rather
thinking
not know
about it.
if I'm nervous until.
Okay, I won't worry about that.
Okay.
Where's the kick for you,
What?
David, in performing? In performance, when you're on stage?
That's it. Complete. Really.
Being there.
Yeah.
The entrance. I can imagine that it would be very exciting profession. I mean, to stand there with that. There are people in the world who've never stood on a stage. Those of us who have forget this. I mean, to stand on a giant stage like that with a band behind you. At rehearsal today, I stood in for you.
Oh, right, I tell you.
You know what I mean? And the
yeah.
feeling of standing there with that sound coming behind you is very exhilarating.
I had an incredible feeling, and I got a lot of fulfillment from working in productions like Diamond Dogs or the Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
But it was one of putting together lots of bits and pieces and loose ends and directing the whole thing and remembering 1,000 things at once. So that was one kind of fulfillment. But now that I'm working just with the band and singing, which is something I haven't done for years, just stand there and sing my songs,
yeah.
I'm finding a new kind of fulfillment. I'll go back to doing productions.
You will?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to go out and sing my songs as a singer-songwriter for a bit.
Yeah.
And then I'll...
Okay. We have to take a break right now for a message, but we'll be back. Stay with us. David, what kind of student were you in school?
As I say, not very academic.
Yeah.
I suppose I was considered arty.
Arty?
Yeah.
But did you go through college or to college or?
Oh, yeah. I went to a technical college near London that had an art course for people from 12 upwards who couldn't do anything else much, like maths or physics or something.
Yeah.
So I took art.
All right.
Mm.
You know that Jagger studied economics.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I mentioned that once when he was on, and some of his fans were disappointed to hear that. And he was at the London School of Economics.
Yes.
And it ties into something you said in an interview you did with William Burroughs, which I thought was interesting if it's in fact true.
Oh, don't believe it.
Well, everything ties in with something else you said, which is don't ask me any questions because I'll say something different every time.
Mm-hmm.
But taking a chance here, taking a stab in the light, you said that the lives of the rock stars are really not as strange as the lives of the fans, and that the fans actually, it's an interesting point, that the fans sort of envy the stars, but in effect, the stars live more conventional lives and envy the fans. And it strikes me as odd, the idea that, fans are out shoving, I don't know, nutmeg under their cuticles or something and trying to be really freaky. And you and Jagger are sitting around discussing economics before the Anschluss in the Benelux nations or something. Am I exaggerating this?
No, he speaks economics and I don't understand him.
But is this in fact true? What is your private life like without being too personal? Oh yeah, do.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. Well,
be fairly
no,
prosaic,
what I meant is that when I first started, I could get out and about a bit, and I used to go to clubs and dance, and that was quite easy.
Yeah.
And I sorted out what I wanted to wear and what I wanted to do. But later on, when things became slightly cocooned,
Slightly what?
Cocooned.
Oh.
I was kind of, in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I found that I was seeing what everybody else was wearing when they used to come to the shows, and I thought, I'm kind of out of it a bit. So it ends up that I kind of get influenced by people who come to see me. I mean, canes, you see. I mean, I saw a person with a cane once, of course. But then, somebody started bringing them to the gigs, and I really liked them. So I started using one.
So
it wasn't me, it was them.
You've been influenced by your audience and your
Yeah,
style.
I think you are a lot.
How do you dream up your latest manifestation? You know what I mean?
Which one particularly?
In any case. Do you sit at a sketch pad? Do you work from your own dreams? Do you have visions?
Travel. I mean, I'm in a very lucky position of not wanting to fly. So I take a ship or a train or something.
You won't fly?
No.
I read you took the Trans-Siberian Railway somewhere.
Yeah, that's one of the things that...
things.
Yeah, it was right through Russia, from Nahodka through to Moscow. And from Moscow, Warsaw, East Berlin, got chucked off there, threatened to send back to Moscow.
Why won't you fly?
It scares me. You are.
Afraid the plane will come down when it isn't supposed to.
I don't like the feeling of going up at that speed. It always feels like something running very fast and then like going to the edge of a cliff and then jumping and opening to get to the other side.
I like that, though.
Well, it should be like if it's like just goes like that.
Yeah.
I'd like us also.
Why do rock stars tend to have premonitions of doom? It seems to be a theme in their work and in their life.
Oh, because they're pretty nutty to be doing it in the first place, anyway.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. You know, got a very tangled minds, very messed up people.
Do you ever try to picture yourself at 60?
No.
So, somebody said the idea of a reunion of the Beatles in their 70s, they come tottering out onto the stage. Someone holds a guitar up in front of them while they pluck it, or their 80s, let's say. This is a rather personal question, but is that your real hair color?
Of course it isn't it? I've never said it. No,
I know the answer to that.
I'm a blonde.
When you walk around New York and a hard hat says, "Hey, sweetheart," you know,
I drive
do you
around
have
New York.
witty respect. Good idea. What do your parents do for a living?
Well, my father's dead, and my mother has a small flat, and I think she's got a day job.
Does she have trouble explaining you to the neighbors who say, "Are you any relation to that?"
I think she pretends I'm not hers. She doesn't talk much. You know, she doesn't. I don't think we were never that close, particularly. We have an understanding.
Yeah. It's not true that your real name is Menimsha Spiegelgas, is it? There's
Yeah.
a rumor that, is it really? You didn't want that revealed?
I was waiting for you to reveal it.
Well, I'm sorry if you didn't want that out, but what is black noise?
Black noise.
Yeah.
Black noise is something that Burroughs got very interested in. It's
intriguing.
Well, no, it's one facet of black noise is that everything, like a glass, if an opera singer hits a particular note, the vibrations are that of the metabolism of the glass, and it cracks it. Yeah. So black noise is the register within which you can crack a city or people, or it's a new controlled bomb. It's a noise bomb, in fact, which can destroy.
Is
Why did you ask
it
that?
a real thing? I mean, is it something that's actually
it is, yeah.
somebody's
It was
experimenting
invented in
with?
France.
Could a tyrant use it to...
Well, until last year, you could buy the patent for it in the French patent office for about equivalent to $3-4.
And it would wipe out it's concentrated.
It depends how
sound
much
waves.
money you put into it. I mean, a small one could probably kill about half the people there, but a big one could destroy a city, or even more. I mean,
It's a weird idea.
don't look at. It's not my idea.
No.
So,
Well, let's not give the instructions on how to do it. Can you recommend a good book to your fans? A good book?
but this week, apart from yours,
Oh, do I have a book out?
yeah. Oh no, I walked into that.
No, I wondered. No, I wondered if you. Last thing I read, you said that Kerouac was important to you, but that's a long time back. What are you
Well, I
reading?
didn't say I'm reading Machiavelli.
You're reading Machiavelli?
No.
Oh. What would you read?
What am I reading
What would
at
we
the
find
moment?
on your coffee table in your apartment in?
At the moment, mainly pictures. I bought Diane Arbus's book of photographs. It's
Yeah.
a photographer that I like very much.
Could I ever do a walk-on in your show? I've got to know what it feels like to stand on stage in a big production thing like that.
In
I
a
suppose it would
production?
screw up your.
Well, if I had a part for you, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if I were to bring out a cup of tea and a good book.
If it's your book.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. You do mine.
Don't ask me about my book.
You have a book.
Well,
You're
funnily
coming.
enough,
A book coming. Don't you?
yes, I'm writing a novel.
You are?
Yeah, based on the Trans-Siberian Express.
Oh, really?
That's
Say-
it. Now you can ask me the next one.
I'm glad to know that. How do you say your wife's name? I've seen it printed Angels and Angela. Which is the typo?
Angela, Angie.
Her real name is Angela.
Just Angela.
Yeah. Is she a model?
Is she what?
A model or an actress? Or I
No,
only saw
she
one
was,
very attractive picture of her.
No, she was an intellectual that went to school in Switzerland and has a vast capacity for knowledge and runs around, does theses on everything.
Yeah. And how do you say your son's name?
Zoe,
Your son's name is Zoe Bowie.
yeah.
Is it true that Frank Zappa has a child named Moon Unit?
Yes.
Can you imagine? growing up, kids in a tough neighborhood, hey, moon unit. Do we have a message? We will take a break here and we'll be right back. So, you know, somewhere someone is writing a learned paper in a university called something like Jagger and Bowie, Prophets of a Pluralistic Society, and you know this Prophets of Doom or something. Do you read this stuff? And you see critics write very elaborate intellectual analyses of your work and other people's. Does this put you to sleep?
The bad ones. I always read the good ones.
Yeah. Do you want to be understood? You know what I mean? Ziggy Stardust
Absolutely
was
nothing to understand. I mean,
was concerned with famine in the world and so on, and prophecies of the world running out of food and stuff like that.
I'm a storyteller and a story writer, and I decided that I preferred to enact a lot of the material I was writing rather than perform it as myself. At this moment, I'm performing as myself, but I will continue in the future, after I've done what I wish to do at the moment, return back to writing stories, and I will enact them again, and I don't care what anybody says. I like doing it, and it's what I shall continue to do.
Well, I'm not stopping you.
You know, it's not, and nothing that I do is on any kind of intellectual slant.
You got no mission.
No, it's just...
yeah.
Oh.
Can you do anything about their ripping London apart? I've been there about 7 times. We were talking about this the other night, and you told me the appalling news that they've torn down Whistler's house, the artist.
From what I've heard, the
Is
Peacock
Buckingham Palace a McDonald's stand yet? I can't believe that what they're doing. You have a lot of influence.
Not since I bought it.
I was going to say, you have influence and money. Can't
No,
you
you
other
can't.
artists
No
do
one has
something?
any influence. I mean, everything's been sectioned off into separate pieces of property, and no doubt now that the socialist government has nationalised, or is going to nationalise, ground, more of it will come down. And
Don't you think it's awful?
I don't know. I haven't made any decision on it because I know a lot of families that need houses. As much as I like a lot of the architecture, you know, I don't know. I can't generally. Oh, don't ask me about politics. And I mean, what do I know? I'm a
Did I say
rock singer.
politics?
But that's what it will become, you see, because I mean, it's all politics.
I see.
Motivation of finance. You know, that's politics, isn't it?
Well, why don't we take a break? We'll be right back. And thank you for coming.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
More important than that, David Bowie has an announcement to make. Let's now go over live by satellite to beautiful downtown Burbank in Los Angeles. Are you there, David Bowie?
Yes.
Last time we met on the air, you were sitting in this studio at this side, and you had a very elegant earring hanging from either your left or right ear. I can't remember. Do you remember that?
How are you, Russell? It's nice to see you.
Thank you. It's nice to see you, David. You look well. What colour is your hair?
Which bit?
The centre bit at the top, above where your nose would be.
Well, what colour does it look?
Well, it looks like a bit of something out of the end of Straw Dogs.
Something out of the end of Straw Dogs.
Right. Now, you've got an announcement to make to us all, David, haven't you? You're changing your plans for the future, and you've got something up your sleeve for 1976.
Yes. I'm touring, but I'm coming back to England in May to play shows and look at you and look at England.
Well, you know,
and be there, be English.
Again.
Well, as always, but English in England.
You know, you haven't, your accent, your voice, your method of speech has not changed. You've been away for 2 years.
Yeah.
Does that mean you've been locked away somewhere?
Yes, I don't talk to anybody.
But do people talk to you?
I've heard it rumoured, yes.
Now, when you come back to England to sing...
But I've always had this thing in my ear, so it's been difficult to hear them.
But people could shout into your other ear, couldn't they?
Yes.
Right. Now, when you come back to England, you're not presumably coming back with the glamoury, glittery Ziggy Stardust thing, are you?
Uh-huh.
Are you coming back as that?
I don't know yet. I haven't even worked on it.
So
I think it'll probably...
it'll
be a lot more spontaneous.
What? You haven't planned your wardrobe, you haven't planned a figure, you haven't planned an image, whatever that may mean.
I think the image I may adopt may well be me. I'm sort of
inventing me at the moment.
You mean reinventing you yourself?
Yes, self-invented.
From the waist upwards?
Yes, jolly uncomfortable.
Is it? Now then, how are you... But you really have no simple idea about what you're going to wear. I mean, are you going to wear a little suit, a straight suit, or are you going to be
I know what songs I'm going to sing, which is the most important thing.
Are they new?
But nothing else, no.
Are they new songs?
And I know the kind of musicians I'm bringing back. And I know sort of approximately how long I'm going to sort of play for on stage, but that's the important thing.
Right, what's brought you back? Are you short of money, or are you short of the feeding off live audience bit?
I'm short of England, more than anything else.
In what way? I mean, you do know that the England you left 2 years ago is not the England you're going to come back to.
Yeah, well, this Thursday is nothing like last Thursday, but it's just as important. I'd miss it if it wasn't after Wednesday.
Right. Do you know that the pop scene at this end, the pop world, has changed somewhat since you left?
No.
Have you heard of the Bay City Rollers?
Yes.
Well, you know that they're appealing to a kind of large, mass hysterical audience of young people who wave a lot of stuff around. Now, I wonder what kind of audience you're going to come back to face.
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm thinking in a kind of way you may have to create a whole new scene for yourself.
No.
What?
Can't qualify that. I'll just come back and play my songs.
Now, for someone, you've been quoted as saying, David, that for someone who's not really a very good musician, you've made a lot of rumpus, a lot of noise.
Yeah.
If you don't think you're a good musician, what are you looking for at this moment? What are you searching for?
Got
Liquid.
Treetop apple juice.
Is it good? Would you spit some across the satellite?
No.
Good. For someone who claims not to be all that good a musician, why are you coming back to perform on stage? Or are you a better musician, in fact, than you admit?
I can't link those two parts. If I'm not that good a musician, why am I coming back?
Yes. Yes.
Well, coming back has got nothing to do with being a musician.
But do you think you're a better musician after 2 years
But
away
I
from
don't
it?
play anything on stage. I'm a good performer, and I'm a good singer. That has nothing to do with being a musician, does it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you
might do.
You must tell me that. I mean, it's such a profound statement. I don't think I can.
Oh, it doesn't have to be that one-sided, does it?
Well.
Aren't you going to contribute?
A little bit, yes. I'm worming away by expensive satellite. Now,
Okay.
well, all right. Now, you've also said that you need to astound people. You don't want to come back just as an ordinary person doing an ordinary gig at the Odeon Hammersmith or wherever it is. Do you have any idea at this stage, apart from just getting out on the stage, how you shall astound us? Or does it actually come to you in the middle of the night before?
I shall probably be a lot fatter than I've been. That'll be my... No, I haven't any thoughts about that at all. The impact of the show has to be the astounding thing, not the dressing of it, you know. Yeah. Dressing of a show is just a dressing. It's a sort of a perfunctory kind of thing. But the content has to astound. I mean, you can dress a show with $1 trillion or £1 trillion worth of goodies, but if the show is not substantial, there will be no impact.
In your memory, what is the best thing you've done on any stage anywhere that still lives with you, that you use as a measuring stick?
That's very hard. One of the most exciting things I did was work with old Lindsay Kemp, back in where would it be? I can't remember which theatre we did it in, but years ago. It was a combined sort of mixed media show. That was very good.
And it didn't have to be a big, glossy, exciting thing. I mean, it was a small, but something important to you.
Well, yes.
Right. Now, you've just finished making the film called The Man Who Came to Earth.
Fell to Earth.
Fell to Earth, I beg your pardon. One of the it's not an easy film to explain to people who haven't seen it, and it's not yet finished, is it?
It's finished in visual. It's not finished in sound. I've got to record the sound. We've written a lot of it. I tell you, all I can tell you is it's a love story more than anything else. It's very, very sad, very romantic. It brought a lump to my throat watching it. And it's been a gas working on it. Yeah.
How much of a new, how easily did you take to the discipline of filmmaking, which is, as we all know, a hard...
Oh, quite easily. I'm a very disciplined person, you know. It was exciting for me to work with other people who are as disciplined as I am.
Are you being absolutely accurate and honest when you say you're a disciplined person?
Oh, yes.
You impose a discipline on your own music writing, on your own work, do you? I mean, you don't just get up when you know what I'm saying to you. A lot of people in your position have a kind of reputation.
A discipline doesn't mean that you make sure that you have breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, right, and you are out of the house by 8:30. Discipline is that if you conceive something, then you decide whether or not it's worth following through, and if it's worth following through, then you follow it through to its logical conclusion. Good. And do it with to the best of your ability. That's the discipline. Yes?
I applaud that answer.
Whether there are areas in it that are not to one's liking, you have to go right the way through it and do it, and that's what I do.
And more importantly, not to other people's liking. I mean, there are often things that if you decide to do as a major star, you're going to get people worked up about.
Yes.
Because you don't appear at the right place at the right time, or imagination is drying up and you need something else to refuel it.
It's because I thoroughly enjoy looking at myself and looking at the environment that I'm in at any time with the eyes of someone who's not involved in any particular line of the arts. So it comes out as a sort of eclectic manifestation, you know. So I'm still a fan of everything. Fan of films, fan of records, fan of rock bands, and fan of yours.
Well, most kind
I
of
am a fan of yours.
Are you
Great fan
really?
of yours.
Well, let's get back to Eclectic Manifesto.
It occurred to me, having watched MTV over the last few months, that it's a solid enterprise with it, and it's got a lot going for it. I'm just floored by the fact that there's so few black artists featured on it. Why is that?
I think that we're trying to move in that direction. We want to play artists that seem to be doing music that fits into what we want to play for MTV. The company is thinking in terms of narrow casting.
That's evident. It's evident in the fact that the only few black artists that one does see are on about 2:30 in the morning or to around 6. Very few are featured predominantly during the day.
No, that's a...
I'll say that over the last couple of weeks these things have been changing, but it's a slow process.
I know, it's funny, I think people have different perceptions. When you wind up watching, let's say you watch an hour or 2 or even 3 a day, people somehow come away with different ideas about what we are doing. We don't have any kind of day parting for anything, let alone a black artist day parted out of what would be, quote, prime time. We don't have that.
Because one sees a lot there's one black station on television that I keep picking up. I'm not sure which station it's on. But there seem to be a lot of black artists making very good videos that I'm surprised aren't used on MTV.
Well, of course, also we have to try and do what we think not only New York and Los Angeles will appreciate, but also Poughkeepsie or Midwest. Pick some town in the Midwest that will be scared to death by Prince, which we're playing, or a string of other black faces and black music.
Very interesting. Isn't that interesting?
You know, we have to play the music that we think an entire country is going to like, and certainly we're a rock and roll station now. The question would be asked, well, since we're in New York, should PLJ play, the Isley Brothers? Well, you and I might say, yeah, because we have grown up in an era when the Isley Brothers mean something to me, and so do the Spinners, even way after the Isley Brothers. But what does it mean to a 17-year-old? Well, if you talk on the phones to these guys like I did when I was in radio, it's scary.
Well, I'll tell you what it means. I'll tell you what maybe the Isley Brothers or Marvin Gaye means to a black 17-year-old.
Ah.
And surely he's part of America as well,
No
isn't
question, no question. And that's why you're seeing those things.
Do you not find that it's a frightening predicament to be in?
Yeah, but less so here than in radio.
And is it not, well, no, don't say, well, it's not me, it's them. Is it not possible that it should be a conviction of the station and of other radio stations
to be fair. It does seem to be rampant through American media. Should it not be a challenge to try and make the media far more integrated in music,
happening.
especially of anything in musical terms?
Absolutely, I think it's happening because white music and white musicians are now starting to play more than ever, more than they have lately, let's say in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
What black artists have been into. And now, hopefully, the lines are going to start to blur. And when we play a band like ABC,
Yeah.
well, there's white and black kids who are enjoying it, and all of a sudden, well, it's a little bit easier for a white kid to understand it. The fact is, quite frankly, I could even point you towards a letter in the new issue of The Record,
Yeah.
the magazine The Record, responding to an article by Dave Marsh, that this kid just ranted about what he didn't want to see on MTV.
Well, that's his
And in no
problem.
uncertain terms, well, what I'm saying, though, is that there's, as you say, there's certainly a lot of black kids and white kids who may want to see black music. There's a ton of them who are, it's not like it was in '67 where you say, yeah, I'm not into that, you know, but you are, yeah. Now it's, you're into that, I don't like you. And that's scary, and we can't just turn around and go, well, look, this is the right way. We can only teach, I think, a little bit at a time.
Interesting. Okay, thank you very much.
It seems to me that there's been a constant reinvention.
Of sorts, yeah.
Why do you do that?
I think I was quite happy to buy into the idea of reinvention up until the beginning of the 80s, really. And it came about, I think, more than anything else, that when I was a teenager, I had it in my mind that I would be a creator of musicals. I sincerely wanted to write musicals for the West End and for Broadway, whatever. I didn't see much further than that. As a writer, and I really had the idea in my head that people would do my songs. And I was not a natural performer. I didn't feel at ease on stage, ever. And I had created this one character, Ziggy Stardust, that it seemed that I would be the one that would play him because nobody else was doing my songs, and the chances of my actually getting a musical mounted were very slim. And so I became Ziggy Stardust for that period, whatever. And things sort of led. I liked the idea, and I felt really comfortable going on stage as somebody else. And it seemed a rational decision to keep on doing that. And so I got quite besotted with the idea of just creating character after character. And I think probably there must have been a point in the late 70s, well, I know there was, where I felt that the characters were in fact getting in the way of myself as a writer, and I endeavoured to kind of kill them off and start writing for me as just a singer-songwriter. I'm not sure if I was ever successful in that, because I do take a degree of theatricality when I go on stage all the time. That's how I deal with the stage situation. I'm still not comfortable on stage.
But I mean, David Bowie himself is an invention. I mean, do you think of yourself as Bowie or David Jones, the boy from South London?
Less and less as Bowie.
How are we supposed
I don't
to
even know
pronounce
how
it?
to pronounce it anymore. I've lost track. I always thought it was Bowie. I thought, well, it's a Scottish name, must be Bowie. But nobody in Scotland pronounces it like that. They pronounce it Bowie, I think.
Now Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly, and the Spiders from Mars, where they played at left hand.
It was some kind of discovery in the 80s, I think, that a lot of what I am is my enthusiasms. That I've always been a very curious and enthusiastic person, again, as from when I was a teenager, and that it really wasn't up to me to try and identify exactly what that meant. I just had to accept that I was a person that had a very short attention span, would move from one thing to another quite rapidly when I got bored with the other. I became comfortable with that and didn't try and identify myself or try and ask myself who I was. The less questioning I did about myself as to who I was, the more comfortable I felt. So now I have absolutely no knowledge of who I am, but I'm extremely happy.
But do you find the business of being in the music industry as interesting and attractive as it is?
I have nothing to do with the industry. I really have so little to do with it. The hub of my creativity comes from what I do and where I go. I put myself in places, one that maybe I've never been before, or that I feel there's a certain tension involved. I can't really write or produce much if I'm in a place that's relaxing. I have to have a set of conflicts going around me, not necessarily of my own doing. I've learned that that is a particularly bad idea.
What do you mean?
So, well, I don't create my own conflicts in my own life. I think I might have done that to quite an extent when I was younger. Is actually things were going too smoothly, I would be drawn, because being an addictive personality, I would be drawn to create conflicts that would produce the tension necessary to write. Now I find that I can do it by observation more than being deeply involved in a mess to be able to write. Yeah. But the industry side of things, I'm not even sure what that word actually represents to me anymore.
I mean, at a personal level, you don't do drugs anymore.
No, absolutely not.
And you don't drink?
I don't drink either, no.
Not even a glass of wine or anything?
No, it would kill me if I started
What do you mean
again.
it would kill you?
I'm an alcoholic, so it would be a kiss of death for me to start drinking again. And my relationships with my friends, my family, everybody around me are so good and have been for so many years now. I wouldn't do anything to destroy that again. You know, it's very hard to have relationships when you're doing drugs and drinking. For me personally, anyway. You become closed off, unreceptive, insensitive, all the dreadful things that you've heard every other pop singer ever say. And I was very lucky that I found my way out of that. It's been good for me. I've reassessed my life any number of times.
Put on your red shoes and dance the blues. Dance to the song they're playing on the radio.
If you were starting out now, did I read somewhere that you said if you were 19 you wouldn't go into the music business?
I think that's probably quite right. I think I'd probably just be a fan and a collector of records.
What would you do?
I wanted to be a musician because it seemed rebellious, it seemed subversive. It felt like one could affect change to a form. It was very hard to hear music when I was younger, you know. When I was really young, you had to tune into AFN radio to hear the American records. There was no MTV, and it wasn't sort of wall-to-wall blanket music. And so therefore it had a kind of a call to arms kind of feeling to it. This is the thing that will change things. This is a dead, dodgy occupation to have. It's still, produced signs of horror from people if you said, I'm in rock and roll. It was, my goodness. Now it's a career opportunity. And the internet is now, carries the flag of being subversive and possibly rebellious and chaotic, nihilistic and... Oh, yes, it is. Forget about the Microsoft element. The monopolies do not have a monopoly, maybe on programs.
What you like about the what you like about it is the fact that anyone can say anything or do anything.
From my standpoint, from where I am, because of by virtue of the fact that I am a pop singer and writer, I really embrace the idea that there's a new demystification process going on between the artist and the audience. I think when you look back at, say, this last decade, there hasn't really been one single entity, artist or group, that have personified or become the brand name for the 90s. It was starting to fade a little in the 80s, and in the 70s there were still definite artists, in the 60s there were the Beatles and the Hendrix, and in the 50s there was Presley. Now it's subgroups and genres. It's hip-hop. It's girl power. It's a communal kind of thing. It's about the community. It's becoming more and more about the audience, because the point of having somebody who led the forces has disappeared because the vocabulary of rock is too well known. It's a currency that is not it's not devoid of meaning anymore, but it's certainly only a conveyor of information now. It's not a conveyor of rebellion. And the internet has taken on that, as I say. And so I find that a terribly exciting area. So from my standpoint, being an artist, I like to see what the new construction is between artist and audience. There is a breakdown. There's a personified, I think, by the rave culture of the last few years, where the audience is at least as important as whoever is playing at the rave. It's almost like the artist is to accompany the audience and what the audience are doing. And that feeling is very much permeating music and permeating the internet.
But what is it specifically about the internet? I mean, anybody can say anything. And it all adds up to what? I mean, it seems to me there's nothing cohesive about it in the way that there was something cohesive about the youth revolution in music.
Oh, but absolutely. And because I think that we, at the time, up until at least the mid-70s, really felt that we were still living under the, in the guise of a single and absolute created society, where there were known truths and known lies, and there was no kind of duplicity or pluralism about the things that we believed in. That started to break down rapidly in the 70s, and the idea of a duality in the way that we live. There are always 2, 3, 4, 5 sides to every question. That the singularity disappeared. And that, I believe, has produced such a medium as the internet, which absolutely establishes and shows us that we are living in total fragmentation.
You don't think that some of the claims being made for it are...
moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico, it's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about. But it's happening in every form. It's happening in visual art. The breakthroughs at the early part of the century with people like Duchamp, who were so prescient in what they were doing and putting down. The idea that the piece of work is not finished until the audience come to it and add their own interpretation, and what the piece of art is about is the grey space in the middle. That grey space in the middle is what the 21st century is going to be about.
A whisper of hope that seems to fade. Maybe I'm gone right out of my time, breaking my life in two.
Bowie bonds are one of the things you're best known for.
Yeah.
You were supposed to raise 30 million by selling...
Yes, I did.
Rights to your earnings, future earnings on your back
catalogue.
Back catalogue, yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't there come a point at which there's no point in earning any more money?
Do you know how expensive it is to get involved in the internet? I think that I probably, the majority of the money that I make I plough back into some new project or other. I also, of course, being working class, always feel that there's never enough to leave my family. So there's a kind of a survival instinct that, okay, I could definitely, that's going to be fine. I can leave that to all the kids, future and past, and everybody will be okay. However, I would love to start a new internet company as well, so I'll need a bit more for that. So you kind of get a bit, you just keep ploughing it back in. I'm not a buyer of things. I think the only thing that I buy, addictively and obsessively probably, is art, you know. I'm not really a house man or a car man. The only nice car I've ever bought for myself was a 1967 E-Type, 1.5, which is quite, I would get the half. And I don't have things. I don't have a plane. I don't have I haven't got very much, Joe. I'm not a buyer of stuff. I do tend to regard money as the oil to get other things going. I feel more comfortable with it like that.
Do you have any desire to come back here?
I'd love to come back here, and I will. We haven't decided when it'll be, but that's an absolute given. There's a few other things I want to get accomplished over the next, I'd say 2 years, that may be quite surprising to people.
What do you make of Cool Britannia?
Oh, lumpen. It's so cliched and silly and ineffective, I think. I don't think it's really changed. I think it might have, I think it's helped the media get some handle on how to describe these times, but I don't think anybody else anywhere believes it, you know. There's good and bad in everything that we do. We're brilliant architects, got some wonderful artists, visual artists, and some rubbish artists as well. Music, we've always been good at music. We're not truly a rock nation. Everything that we do in rock and roll has a sense of irony attached to it. We know that we're not the Americans. We know it didn't spring from our souls. And so as the British always do, they try and do something with it to make them feel smug. And that's what we're good at doing.
But when you see politicians embracing rock stars, I mean, personally, I start reaching for my revolver then.
Or at least I wear a pair of women's high heels when I meet our Prime Minister. I do my bit still. He didn't even notice, you know.
What, this was Tony Blair? He didn't notice you were wearing
women's stiletto shoes and a nice suit and tie. That's the last time I wore a tie, I think. No, it wasn't. No, I wore a vicar's dog collar. Nice black suit, black shirt with a dog collar and a pair of women's high heels. And he didn't bat an eyelid.
Thank you very much.
David Bowie, outsider, man of a million faces. Follow his changes, this chameleon of rock.
That sounds like you hate that kind of.
Yes, I do. I do. I think it's lazy journalism. Firstly, for instance, a chameleon is something that changes its colour to suit its background, which I don't think that's what's intended when they say that. And the changes thing is just such ghastly alliteration anyway.
You've been making music for more than 25 years now.
Yeah.
Is there something like a thread going in that...
Oh, it's as corny as Search for a Spiritual Foundation. I really do think it's as kind of cliche as that.
That's an easy answer.
Yes, I know, and unfortunately I keep coming back to it, you know. I suppose it's that... is a term that the Gnostics use, which is called the God beyond God. And I think that there's a sense of some merit in the chaos that we perceive as our existence. And for someone like myself who comes from, like most of us, I don't know, in this room, come from the Judeo-Christian upbringing, there's something that palls with the idea of having a God who's a judge and a father and an arbiter of morals and whatever. It just doesn't... It seems too symbolic, it's too easy. And I think that the idea that the early Gnostics had, which is that there is in fact the deep, the depth of the God beyond the God. There's something beyond that which one can't call a singular entity. It's something that just pervades everything. And I still think that that's probably one of the major searches that I've probably made in my life. I'm not sure how close I ever got, but I know that it does occur to most of us, I think, who work in the arts or in writing or expressing oneself. When you're expressing oneself, you're also trying to express one's existence, you know, so it's wrapped up in the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. It's something to do with that. It's something to do with what used to be feelings of alienation, although those feelings have kind of dissipated over the last 10 years for me. I don't feel as though I'm picked on by today. I feel as though I feel comfortable in my society. I don't think I'm as obsessive as I used to be by any means. I think I have such a great personal domestic life now that a lot of my energy is going to that. I think when I felt sort of disenfranchised to a certain extent from life around me, I think I just focused in on work and nothing else. But that was a long time ago, in almost 20 years, you know. I don't have that obsession anymore, quite the same way.
No? Are you happy for that?
It's relative. I'm very happy with the way my life is. I have a very fulfilled life. I think it has to be measured in terms of fulfillment. And as a person, I feel very fulfilled in that way. I do equal enough work and live a very fulfilling life with my chosen partner and family. I find nothing lacking. There's nothing really I want out of life that I haven't somehow been given some kind of access to, which is, I'm very lucky, extremely lucky. I don't think there's an ounce of Americanism in me. I'd likely contended to be in rock and roll. I think I probably would have been far better suited in another time for sort of vaudeville or cabaret or something. I don't feel like a rock and roll animal, even one iota.
No?
No, I'm a pop singer, much more a pop singer than I'm a rock singer. I don't need... I think it's performing on stage or doing anything, I think, in any of the art forms. One is to be loved. And I think when you want that, when you need an audience's love, I think that you have to, and what you end up doing is trying to match their expectations and trying to sort of say, well, what would they want, you know? And I think that there's this, like, rather cranky idea that people like me have, is that you know, you want to keep exploring different avenues. And I guess that because I get all my love that I need at home, I don't really feel that I need to please an audience in quite that same way. So I'm prepared for more or less anything I get. But I really insist in doing things that give me the kind of musical, again, I use the same word, fulfillment, that I require as an artist. So it means doing some things that are quite, I guess, bizarre or obscure or kind of off the wall for an artist of my age and standing. For me personally, I think there's been some songs that I really have always adored. I never really given myself a chance to play them, because the shows that I've done up until 1990, especially during the 80s up through the 90s, were generally so stacked with things that probably the audience would wish to hear, that there wasn't much room left for doing some of the songs that I'm now able to do, because I'm juxtaposing the material from outside with things like Teenage Wildlife and Joe the Lion, Andy Warhol. Actually, and Look Back in Anger. Interestingly enough, there are two, I'm adding on for this tour, 2 songs that were from the Ziggy Stardust album, but ones which I haven't done for something like 25 years, which are 5 Years, which was the opening track, and the closing track, which is Moon Age Daydream, which is really quite exciting, doing them with this band.
What is the thing that he can put extra on your music?
I don't know. It's always a really embarrassing question for me, because I'm not quite sure what it is that Brian does. I mean, he doesn't play very much. I always mix my albums. So I guess it has something to do with the fact when he puts himself into a work situation, he just changes the parameters of what you're doing, more by verbalizing different approaches to what one does. So it's more kind of a philosophic content with Brian than a kind of a didactic, musicianly kind of overall control. He's very good at what-ifing. You were to do this, or what if you were to do that, and possibly come up with new choices of avenues to take that maybe we wouldn't otherwise have thought of. So he's really important in the very early stages of making an album, because he can set it on a path that will be unusual. And that's where he tends to feel happiest, I think, in the inception of making an album. He's, like me, has a very short attention span. I think once he's done a few days' work, well, I'm off now, and he'll go off somewhere else. And then the next bit is, I am with Nay, hey. Okay, 1,
2, 3, 4.
I am Renee. I am Ramona Ray Stone.
And she shall say,
I am Renee.
Outside really came from, Brian and I since the 70s, there's a museum near to where I live in Switzerland called L'Art Brut, which was, I think it was started by Dubuffet, the painter. And in the late 70s, Brian and I would go there a lot and look at the stuff there, because it was, it's quite bizarre, the presentations there and the paintings. It's from that genre of art which is now called outsider art. People who are in solitude or ostracized, maybe self-inflicted or institutionalized. They were very strong influences on Dubuffet, and Dubuffet kind of built this museum as like guilt, payback, and put a number of these people in. And it was there's a sense of the non-judgmental about the work. The people who painted from some real inner need to throw everything out in such a way that they were indifferent to whether the work was ever seen or not. So it comes from a place that there are very few painters or artists that I'm aware of, that I know and have met, who actually paint, and then after they finish painting, who are indifferent to what people think of it. We all feel as though we should get some comment on our work, but this work gets to a place which is really, really strange and insular and outside. And I guess that was that became our buzzword for the album. That was trying to resuscitate that same sense of being on the periphery of the mainstream rather than being right in the centre. So it takes on all these different shades for me. Because I also remember fairly clearly my state of mind when I was actually writing it, which was, I guess, as near to a mystical state that a 19-year-old can get into. And I remember it was at a time when I was sort of studying Buddhism, for my 15 minutes of Buddhism. So it's interesting that it changed. It really had two mystical states: the time that I wrote it and recorded it, and the time when he wrote it. When he recorded it, up to his end after that. So I guess it still retains for me a sense of the mystical. You know.
And you play that song on stage?
Yeah. Again, we do yet another very different version.
Thank you. Wow, that's great.
Sold thousands of tickets for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you see, what's the right place to choose Cologne to do
I
your
could
only
actually
concert?
go around and sell the album right now, couldn't I?
Yes, but it's very successful already commercially.
Unbelievable.
It started place 4 in our charts.
It's been like this throughout Europe, and it went in at like 14 in America. It's fantastic.
Yes. So, you know, people love you. They almost go crazy. Cologne is the only place where you're playing your concert tomorrow. The concert it was sold out in 45 seconds. Did you know that?
I think that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Absolutely extraordinary.
Have you been to Cologne before?
Well, mind you, there's only 15 people in the audience, so 45 seconds.
Long ago.
Thank God you speak English.
So, have you been to Cologne before?
I have, yes, but I haven't been there for maybe, since 79, 1980. Something like that.
Long time.
Long time ago. But I used to, for a while, I was living between New York and Berlin in the late 70s.
Yeah.
So I used to come to Germany a lot, and I had a great time in Berlin. This is, of course, when the war was still there. So it's a different kind of vibe.
Was that
I suppose.
Was it a time when you lived with your old friend James Osterberg?
James Osterberg, yeah, Iggy Pop. There were about 3 or 4 of us. There was Jimmy and his girlfriend, and there was myself and one other. We had our apartments in the same block on, it was called, if I remember, Hauptstrasse, 155 in Charlottenburg. That's how I used to go. You get very drunk and Hauptstrasse, 155 when you get home. We had a great time, and I remember none of us had any money then because either we'd been ripped off or, you know, dealings had gone wrong, and we were all pretty broke. And the 3 of them, it was my birthday coming up, they clubbed together and they got me an old 1955 Mercedes. It was rusted completely, so we got in it, and our feet just went through the floor. We went around Berlin in that, and I remember we dropped Iggy off at a club one night. It was, I think, one of the anniversaries of The Wall being put up, you know. And he went to a punk club, and he came back later and he said, it was amazing. They'd made a birthday cake in the shape of The Wall, which went all the way around the room. And at 12 o'clock at night, they jumped on it and ate it. For real.
Yes.
It was, they made this, the entire wall, and then ate it, and he said it was singularly the most moving moment in Berlin that he had spent, because there was something really quite ideological about it, you know?
Yes.
And of course, later on, it really...
It was especially for him, for his birthday.
No, it was the celebration of the wall,
yeah.
of the anniversary of the wall going
Yeah.
up, you know, and it was, he said it was the strangest thing, and of course, that's virtually what they did, and they didn't eat it, of course. Well, I know one person who tried eating it, but he was stoned. But he was...
So now you came back to Europe on the QE2, yes?
Well, not here, because there's no river.
Course.
But, but if I could have, I would have. But you travel on the QE2,
yes,
yeah?
but the other direction, from Southampton to New York, and you came from New York to Southampton.
That's right, yeah. They're 2 different captains.
Yes.
One only knows how to get to Southampton. I think that's true.
What was the average age on the QE2 this time?
114.
Yes.
Something like that. Mainly widows.
Really?
No, it's changed a lot. Because I first went 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And in those days, it really was older people, older generation, all that. This time around, I noticed there was a lot more families with children, you know, because these days they have like things like playrooms on board. There were 5 restaurants, 3 cinemas, casinos, public library, and television studio.
What did you do on board the whole day?
I read and watched DVDs.
Did you walk around?
No, I swam alongside for exercise. You know, I used to keep up because I'm very fit these days. You know.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I swim against the QE2. That's how you do it. But no, most of the time I took DVDs of all the films I can't watch at home because they're all like subtitled European avant-garde classics, and they last 19 hours and have subtitles, and nobody else in my house wants to watch them. So as I was traveling alone, I just watched them on my computer, you know, I listened to music, and I made notes, and I watched the sea. I watched the sea.
Yeah.
The sea watched me.
5 long days.
Yeah. It was wonderful. I loved it.
Is it true you get up very early in the morning at around 6 o'clock?
Well, both of us, both my wife and myself, get up between 5 and 6 in the morning. And the irony is that we now, you know, we just had a small child.
Yes.
And she's 23 months now. But of course, we now get up before she does. So we go and wake her up.
You have to be
Which
quiet.
Is like, it's the parents' revenge, you know.
Yeah. So when did your wife take?
Wake up! And and my baby says, "Oh, come on, give me another hour, right?" So we got milk.
Did your wife take lessons in preparing the birth? You know, in Germany it's very common that, for example, young men accompany their women to lessons like this.
Well, she'd had practice because she also has another daughter, you know, from her ex-marriage, so she knew what was going to happen.
I didn't. Well,
you didn't go together.
Yeah, we did the breathing things and all that. You know, and the counting one and God.
Did you like that?
Well, it was fine, and we got it down, and it was absolutely exact, and it was all timed and everything perfect.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on the actual day, it's like, oh man! Everything goes, you know, and it was just exciting. We raced there in the car and all that, and then I got to cut, you know. That was fun. I like doing that.
But everything went fine.
Yeah, beautiful, wonderful. It was an easy birth. Yeah, it was good.
So when you sit in your office or in your room in the morning and you start composing immediately.
I do, there's virtually
a cup of tea.
A cup of tea. Yeah. Do I compose immediately? No. I just sit there and I get on the telephone to Europe because I live in New York, you know, and so I make telephone calls to Europe all morning. So what's happening? Did you see the Harold Schmidt show last night? What, yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's amazing. So I hear all the gossip, you know.
Yes. But I mean, you wrote this record, the songs for this record, in Woodstock, which we know from the festival.
So very strange.
It's a very quiet area.
Yeah, it's a very hippie. It still is. I mean, it's all kind of flower writing on all the shops, and everybody has long hair and wears beads and all that, you know. And I didn't think I was going to like it at all, but I didn't realize the actual studio was at the top of an extremely high mountain. We were completely isolated from the rest of the area, and I love that because I love isolation. I'm very kind of masochistic like that. I love being cut off from everything, and for a writer it just worked really well. And I think I just sat down to write, and I had been doing for many months, putting together songs that I felt were very strong, and attempted to do no more than express how I felt at my age and with the new family, and my feelings to the universe and our place on this world, and all that. The little questions.
So now you're going on a little tour now in Europe?
Yeah, it's just a promotion tour. I don't want to be away from my family too long. I miss my baby very much indeed, and I want to go home.
Your wife stayed in America?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and at the moment, coincidentally, she's over in England with the whole family, but she's going back in a few days.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back at the end of this month, and then we'll catch up, I guess.
Okay, we do a short commercial break now, and then we hear you live here on stage.
Thank you very much.
David Bowie, madame. Korte pause.
What is it that makes him such a good collaborator and producer?
I think it's because he's brighter than most of them and more interested in the world outside music and kicks.
King of New York himself, Mr. Lou Reed.
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. You know, he's a wonderful guy. I really like him a lot. Really talented.
Besides Iggy and Lou, David has collaborated with Trent Reznor, Stevie Ray Vaughan, The Cure's Robert Smith, Pete Townsend, Mick Jagger, Queen, John Lennon, and others.
The whole essence of fame, you know, the fact that you can put yourself up on the stage before 400,000 people and suddenly become vulnerable. And I remember that for the Young Americans album, you wrote that song Fame with John Lennon.
Yeah.
To me, paid the ultimate price and was the ultimate victim of fame.
Yeah.
How do you deal
What's the question?
How do you deal with that in the 1980s? After a tragedy like that as well.
It's a subject I wouldn't even comment on.
There was no handbook for fame, and you had to learn as you went.
Fame? Now this. What is it good for? Absolutely cool. Fame. Fame, I wouldn't give it tuppence for it. Fame, celebrity, all that stuff is absolute nonsense and really is a hindrance to everything that one wants to do. It's the worst thing about it. I would have loved to have been able to do everything that I have done and be totally faceless.
A combination of fame, money, and Bowie's quick-to-experiment personality would lead to cocaine use. A drug-addled detachment from reality would prove too much, and by the decade's end, he would be clean.
As drugs started to take a more severe hold of my life, the ability within your conscious mind to actually deliver yourself into two separate parts disappears, and the lines blur, and it's only this one formless mutant that's left behind. So it gets quite messy in there. It gets very messy in there. And by the mid-70s, I was so out of my gourd that really it was very impossible. It was all nigh on impossible for me to function in any rational way. I saw an X-ray of what the brain looks like after continual coke use. It's terrifying. it looks like cheddar cheese. It looks like Swiss cheese. Great huge holes everywhere. Not my head. I haven't yet had that done, but a head. It's terribly worrying because it sort of really points up where memory lapses are and whatever. And these holes never heal. You can do the most extraordinary, irreparable damage. Oh, if only I'd known. It was my own prison that I'd formed around myself, what with my own sort of way of life in terms of drugs and everything. I'm so grateful that I found a key to be able to unlock myself from that without too much, without too much damage to my psyche. Naturally, I would advise my son not even to think about it, because I know the inherent dangers of doing it. Somehow or other, I went through a whole series of survivals and crawled out of it all.
Story of David Bowie.
I think every time I do something new, I just pretend I don't have any audience whatsoever, so that I'm totally free of any expectations from anybody. I kind of go in like that, and when I've done it, then I get trepidatious. Then I go, ooh. I felt reviewing things with Eno in that period that I really didn't need to adopt characters to sing my songs for me, that actually I could do them quite well on my own. And it was a confidence booster in that way. Oh yeah, that was the most satisfying. The thing that Brian always uses when I get a bit timid about the work that I'm doing, he says, don't forget that in music you can crash your plane and walk away from it, that art really isn't that full of life-threatening situations. What Brian is really good at, it's the way that he doesn't do anything, which coaxes the best performances out of the people that he's working with.
I wanted to make a kind of music that was like a landscape, you know, that invited the listener to enter. Not with me as a guide, but said, here's the landscape, you find your way through it.
He has a keen sense of conceptualism, and what he does better than anybody else I've met is he's able to frame something and give it a context. Brian introduced me to a whole different system of writing at the time. I mean, I was really feeling stale in the mid-70s. I was physically, spiritually, and emotionally drawn. It's the best word I can use. And he really sort of filled me back up again with a new sort of inspiration for writing and how one can approach it and why one should approach it. I mean, Eno is an extraordinary person. Eno and I came up with what we call planned accidents. We'd put two pretty solid statements together and it would inevitably produce a third piece of information. And that's what you listen for. And when you take that third piece and you start playing around with that.
Me, being a diehard David Bowie fan, just because his approach to music has always been so amazing. You know, as a songwriter he's phenomenal, as a singer he's phenomenal, but also the fact that stylistically and aesthetically he's always been remarkable. You know, in the mid-70s, when everyone else had, like, you know, was making prog rock and, you know, doing like 20-minute guitar solos, he's in Berlin making really cool electronic disco. You know, he knew what was going on before anyone else knew what was going on. It's pretty impressive. That's what people should do. They should follow their real gut love of what they do, you know. There's nothing more, I think, embarrassing than watching somebody who doesn't love what they do, but does it because they believe that's the way they're going to be loved. In this huge ephemeral way by the masses or something.
Would you describe yourself as fearless that way then? Because you've never done that.
Not really. I mean, everything I do with great trepidation. That's absolutely untrue. No, I don't do that. No, I think every time I do something new, I just pretend I don't have any audience whatsoever, so that I'm totally free of any expectations from anybody. I kind of go in like that, and when I've done it, then I get trepidatious. Then I go, ooh, I shouldn't have done this. Nobody's going to like this at all. I know, I'll do a really arty album cover, then they'll like it.
There must be a tendency when you lock onto something that's fairly successful to almost fall into a formula.
That's why
saying...
I always fought against that. And I've never done that, and I really see no reason to start now. I create something out of my enthusiasms at that particular moment. I get re-enthused by something else, and suddenly I don't see that anymore, and I'm over here. And that's the way I am. I've got a very short attention span. No attention span whatsoever. Not many of us have kind of got to this age and still be working in popular, or rather rock music. So there are some decisions to be made by some of us. One of the major ones is that do we continue in a sort of a Sinatra-type fashion and carry the baggage of our past with us? Or do we do something that prohibits that? And for me, I choose the latter course. I now see that I've probably evolved into, devolved, some would say, into 3 ways of writing. One's very theatrically. One is a soundscape venture, and the other is straightforward songs. And I think each album I go into, it's one of those 3 principles that becomes the parameters for why we're going in, with little bits of the others. I like writing, firstly and foremostly. I would give my right arm, maybe not my right arm, I would give somebody's right arm if I could find somebody to sing all my songs for me. I really would. I'm very much of the opinion that it is the interpretation of the receiver or listener that creates that completes the album. But when I listen to other people's work or look at other people's work, maybe, I really don't want to know what they want. I'm less and less interested in what their intention was. I'm far more interested in what my reactions are. But that's coming from the idea that art should be there to be used. I think it was Socrates that said, actually it was Plato, that the artist is positively useless because he can't explain how he does what he does. Therefore, why should anybody take any notice of what his subject matter is? Because if he can't even explain how he does what he does, why should we put any faith in his actual statements when they do come out? And that really makes me feel inadequate, because I haven't a clue how or what I do. I don't know what I do. I don't know what I do. I just know I enjoy it. I think the assumption that I actually get what I do is maybe should be placed in doubt, because I mean, half of the fascination of the work that I do is that I don't fully understand it. I don't know what I do. I just know I enjoy it, and the end result often sends me spinning off somewhere. I mean, it's kind of give myself little trips with the stuff that I write. Early 70s, and where I would take 3 or 4 different subjects and intercut them, literally cut them up with scissors, and then sort them all in a big hat or something, and just pull out bits of phrases and put them together and see if it sparked any interesting ideas. And sometimes the phrases were so good, you could use them just as they came out the hat. Kind of stream of consciousness cut up the world and reassembled it. That kind of chaos, juxtaposition, fragmentation, to evaluate a truer picture of reality. That's what I really enjoy.
We are the Goon Squad and we're coming to town. Beep, beep. Beep, beep.
It's all about fashion in England. I can't tell you. It's all about the trousers. What did Bailey say about fashion? It was never about the clothes. I've worn some trousers probably that done their part in changing the world. My trousers have changed the world.
Reese has to elaborate.
Well, I think it was more the shoes.
It's the shoes.
There. See,
he's got to feed it.
One can be tempted to glide along, you know, which is not a good thing. You know, I had a very bad 80s. Actually, I think everybody had a very bad 80s, didn't they? I particularly did. Specifically from around 84 through till late 88. Those 4 years, in fact. Which is, actually, looking back on my career, I was pretty lucky. I mean, that wasn't so bad. I know artists that have been through much rougher periods. Now, I lost all confidence in what I was doing, and I hated what I was doing, actually. Quite quietly to myself. I didn't tell anybody else around me that I didn't think I was doing very good work. Specifically because it was selling really well, which is really embarrassing, you know, when the best things I mean, like these, you know, albums that you don't really think much of
incredibly big sellers, and it's like, oh, Christ. Adapting to the idea of being kind of mainstream I found very difficult indeed. But looking at it in a fairly sober light, I felt that I could deal with it, you know, and I just couldn't. I was so beat by it, the whole three-ring circus thing about it, and trying to reach a wider and wider audience, you know, without any kind of feelings of artistic passion at all. I didn't really believe in the material I was doing, and indeed some of it was very good material, but I just had lost the belief in myself as a creative artist. And I got introduced to Reeves Gabrels as a guitar player, and just a good guy that I met. And he just very simply said, you've just got to stop doing this, you know, there's no way out. Just stop doing it. Do what you like doing. I said, but you don't understand. He said, yes, I do understand. I've read all the books. And that was it, really, and I just stopped doing it, you know, and I formed Tin Machine with the really quite clumsy idea that I could just disappear into a band anonymously. I found my exit from all that mainstream stuff through Tin Machine. I mean, that was my sort of my holy grail at the time. It was, this is the truth. I don't find it very exciting anymore, generally. I think it's got to get a lot more dangerous again. We're working on it.
On hold in 1989 to form Tin Machine. The band featured Reeves Gabrels on guitar and the sibling rhythm section of Tony and Hunt Sales. The band allowed Bowie the opportunity to return to his roots, touring small clubs and collaborating in what he asserted was a truly democratic creative partnership. They would release 2 studio albums in 1989 and 91.
88, meeting Reeves Gabrels and forming Tin Machine, that I really felt that I was back on course, and things generally started to get back into sync in late 80s, 90s, and I felt excited again, you know. It was a very freeing experience. We'd started writing in a way that that was so reminiscent of the way that I used to write. It was very spontaneous, none of it was pre-written. The stuff was vibrant and exciting. It actually worked for me as a vehicle for getting back to my own personal standards of writing and producing and all that. So I think it was one of the better things that I did. And to follow through from that, I've actually liked an awful lot of what I've done in the 90s. I'm really proud of that work. There's some very good work in there. But I do start off with a clean slate every time. I really try and think, what is it I think now? What is it? Where am I going? Philosophically, how am I looking at my life and the lives of others and how we live our life? That's kind of where I go from each time, I think. I kind of added on to this canon of things that I've developed that I like to harness their energies and the ideas from those things. Everything for me, from early rock, then through rhythm and blues, through early electronica, all those things I keep drawing upon.
After 93's sophisticated and soulful Black Tie White Noise, he would reunite with Brian Eno for 95's industrial techno-influenced Outside, a return to concept records featuring characters.
When I was doing the characters in the early 70s, I think it was some problem for me about whether they were stage characters or recreating aspects of my life and taking it on stage, or whether the thing was evolving on stage and I was then pulling it back into real life. Now I think what I'm doing probably to protect my own sanity is that, in a way, it's a precaution, I guess. Instead of inventing just one character, I've invented about 7 or 8, and I think it enables me to retain the guise of an author, but at least I don't identify with them. The album is about atmosphere. It's about the sound of 1995.
In 1997, Bowie would push himself further into the post-grunge industrial world with the jungle-influenced Earthling.
When the album first came out, there was a big hype surrounding the record as, you know, Bowie's now dabbling in drum and bass and techno.
Dabbling.
It's techno-influenced. There's a great mix of the organic-sounding guitars of Reeves.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what we're still doing, is really unlike anybody else. It's certainly influenced by dance vocabulary, and we would be the first to admit that, but we like that kind of, particularly the drum beat side of it, very much indeed. But I think what we're doing, the hybrid that we've created, is, I feel, a very positive direction for us to go as a band.
And really, there's virtually nobody else doing it. Being 50, I want to see what you can do as a rock artist at 50. And everybody else can do what they want to do, but I know what I want to do, and I've got the chance of doing it. It's extraordinarily exciting for me because I honestly don't know what's going to happen, because I really feel that if I had to lay back on what I've done before, I'd much prefer to stop. But while I'm still wildly excited about what I do as a musician, then that's the course that I choose to take.
Still to come on, the story of David Bowie.
When somebody does like what I do, I mean, that's always, like, really rewarding, you know. You think, cool, that's really good, they really like that. That's good, I won't repeat it then. I always love the latest dance. I mean, my approach is really quite consistent. I don't like why people think that I change all the time. I actually don't, you know, I do the same thing. I really do. I mean, I tend to, whatever it is, I kind of tend to stew it in this kind of vaudevillian-based English idea of pop music. It's rock meets pop, it's soul meets pop, it's in all its Dickie Pride tackiness. Mum, I'm 50. You still got a funny haircut.
On January 9th, 1997, at New York City's Madison Square Garden, a tribute benefit concert took place to commemorate the 50th birthday of David Bowie. Special guests included Lou Reed, Robert Smith, Sonic Youth, Foo Fighters, Billy Corgan, and more.
You take a band like Sonic Youth, I mean, he was doing atonal stuff in 1980. You know, you take The Cure, and he was doing kind of glammy pop in 72. You take me, and then pick your era.
I'm enjoying it so much. I'm going to do this every year. I'm going to be 50 from this point onwards. I haven't lost one iota of enthusiasm for life. I'm extremely lucky that way. I really am. It really is a blessing. As I get older, I get more and more selfish about what it is that I want to do that I find satisfying. And it's definitely how one should spend one's life, is because, you know, if you make yourself happy, a little bit of that sunshine can spread onto others.
When you have a legacy as amazing as David Bowie's, to some extent, I don't know how he feels about it, but there must be a sense of pride knowing that you've created so much iconic music that's touched so many people. And the truth is, like, his new record is wonderful. And David Bowie fans, like everyone I talk to is a David Bowie fan who buys Heathen, listens to it and like, wow, this is really good. You know, 30 years on, and he's still making vital, emotional, wonderful music.
With every David Bowie record, there's a lot of people watching to see what you're going to do next. Yeah. It's almost like...
You get a free Cadillac with this one. It's an amazing thing. This Columbia come up with this idea that every album we sell, we'll give a Cadillac away with it, which I think is an absolutely extraordinary idea. I don't know where they find the money.
The big back catalogue.
I better not say that's really true, or somebody's going to assume, I want my Cadillac.
Let's talk about the artwork.
Sure.
It's very disturbing.
Yeah.
Art shouldn't be desecrated.
No, I agree.
Your own lyrics are crossed out, though.
Well, you know, the idea, it was the subtext of the word heathen. The obvious definition is someone who's not an adherent to the one God. But the other meanings are kind of range from barbarian to Philistine to iconoclast. So the idea of striking out art and negating words by putting lines through them is sort of really trying to find the full range of the word heathen, really.
Let's just quit this Foo Fighters thing and join Bowie's band. I was like, yeah, a double band. I'd do it. Yeah, well, that'd be really good.
Dave Grohl on the record. I'm thinking it must have been a great perfect circle for him to work with you.
Well, we worked, I mean, he came and worked with me. I enjoyed thoroughly working with him the first time at Madison Square Garden on my birthday. He did the show with me there. And he's just so collaborative. He's a very open guy. I like his presence. He's very enthusiastic, strong, curious. I like everything about him. He's a very bright spark.
Do you honestly think that Man Who Sold the World by Nirvana didn't bring anyone to the Bowie camp?
Oh,
I'm talking about a 13, 14-year-old.
I get so many kids who like commend me on covering Nirvana songs. I say, yeah, I'm cutting edge.
Well, I think Outside was probably your last concept record with a character associated with
actually,
it.
quite a few in that one, weren't there? There were about 5 or 6 characters in that one.
Is this a character?
No, not really.
No?
No, I shouldn't have done the eyes. Then it wouldn't have. Then it would just have been me, wouldn't it? It was the eyes that did it. That was a pun on Christianity. The eyes, you see. It's a really awkward and long one as well. The idea is that they're fish's eyes, and of course, fish was the symbol of the hidden Christians in the pagan days. So that's what that's all about. But nobody actually picked up on that. So, oh look, it's the same eyes as the Village of the Damned. So, oh no, he's doing bloody science fiction again. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got a lot more to do with Man Ray and Brunel, actually, I guess.
Isn't it awful when you have to explain it?
Well, I get used to it these days. People are so dumb. Nobody reads anymore. Nobody goes out and looks and searches and explores the society and the culture that they were brought up in. People have attention spans of 5 seconds, and they're as much depth as a glass of water.
I don't think you get frustrated by it, otherwise you wouldn't do it anymore.
Not really, you kind of get resigned to it. You know? I mean, look, I've got to do it all for my own amusement, you know. I can't possibly kind of even begin to think that there's anybody out there that knows or likes what I do. So it's always a treasure when somebody does like what I do. I mean, that's always, like, really rewarding, you know. You think, cool, that's really good, they really like that. That's good, I won't repeat it then.
David Bowie, there's been almost as much written and said about the different faces of Bowie, the different personas.
I take no responsibility at all, Kerry. How are you?
As there has been about the reinvention in your music. When you set out to build a career 40 years ago, did you already then have the kind of groundbreaking musical ambition that emerged in the 70s, or did you really mostly just want to be a star?
I wanted to write theatrical things, but actually, strangely enough, well, maybe it's not so strange when you look at it in context, but when I was around 17, 18, what I wanted to do more than anything else was write something for Broadway. I wanted to write a musical. I had no idea of how you did it or how musicals were constructed, but the idea of writing something that was rock-based for Broadway really intrigued me. I thought that would be a wonderful thing to do. And I saw myself as somebody who would kind of end up writing musicals, in a way. Probably rock musicals of some nature. But it never actually became that, so they were, in a way, they were, those ideas were kind of quashed a little bit when I realised what a huge ambitious thing that was to take on, you know, because you have to write dialogue and all that. And I really didn't know how to approach that. So I took a far simpler course and kind of abbreviated the idea of musical into just a concept piece for an album, and created the characters to go with the different albums. And in the process of doing that, I found that I was actually playing around with the music that I was writing more and more. So it really was, it was character-driven that actually started to interfere with the music in a good way, and my interest eventually became just the music itself. So it's almost like I left a lot of the theatrical ambitions behind when I really got involved in the music itself.
I mean, Ziggy Stardust is a classic illustration, but so how much of Davy Jones was in Ziggy Stardust?
I like Stiggy, personally.
Sticky Stardust.
In fact, that was going to be my next project, was Sticky Stardust.
Yeah.
Or was it Freddie Stardust? I don't really think there was, you know, there was a guy in England just last week. He was in the papers. We have a comedian called Freddie Starr over in Britain. Freddie Starr's the guy who ate the hamster. I don't know if you remember the story. Freddie Starr eats hamster. That wasn't in the Times either. And this fella looked a lot like me, and so he went to a plastic surgeon to get his face changed, and now he looks like Freddie Starr. I just thought that was a really funny story. Where do we go from?
Well, come back to it. How much of Davy Jones was in Ziggy?
I don't think there was very much at all. I mean, I honestly, I was trying to create
an idea of how to expand rock and expand the horizons of it. And I took as the alien form for Ziggy, as he was supposed to be an alien of some kind. I based him very much on a Japanese concept. At that particular time in the early 70s, we knew so little about Japan, and Japan really hadn't exploited itself and brought its stuff over to the West, you know, so it still seemed like an alien society. But it was a human alien society, so you could make a human connection to Japan far more than you could say to Mars, which would be, you know, just beyond.
And how easy was it to leave the character behind? You killed him off so emphatically.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. I really didn't, because I really wanted to move on. In '73, we'd, you know, incredible. The whole thing lasted only for 18 months in all, I think. I mean, it's just incredible. We did 1 year's worth of tours. We never even played Europe. We played England and the States. I should have killed my manager. We never played Europe, never played Australia. And it was over. It was just over. I decided, that's enough. I don't want to get, you know, imprisoned by all this. And because I really wanted to, towards the last 2 or 3 months of the whole Ziggy tour, I'd already kind of decided what I wanted to do and what I wanted to write. So for me, it was just absolutely necessary to move on.
And what was behind the androgynous images of the 70s?
It just seemed so perfect within the time. That really represented what the 70s was all about. There was such a feeling, coming out of the 50s and into the 60s, there was a real opening up of attitudes in the 60s. And then the 70s, everything became, it was the pluralistic 70s, you know. There were so many sides to a story in the 70s. Before, in the 50s, it was just black and white. It was one story, yes, and one story, no. But in the 70s, you could look at things in so many different ways. Nothing was right. The idea of absolutes, it was kind of starting to disappear. It wasn't a, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. And I just felt that it really summed up the whole of what the 70s were going to be about. It was a guess, and it was a good one.
But how much of that was you?
Oh, I think that definitely was me. I mean, I was, in my opinions and in my interests, I was extremely Catholic. I mean, there was nothing that didn't interest me. I had a burning curiosity. I still do have a burning curiosity for just about everything, except country and western, of course. But other than that, I really like to understand the society that I'm living in and how it works, how it functions, and what people are thinking, you know. You can't be a writer in any other way, I think. You have to sort of know where you are to write.
Does that how you see yourself mostly or primarily as a writer, firstly?
I think up until the last couple of years I would definitely have said yes, absolutely, completely. But I'm so surprised that I never really enjoyed performance very much. I mean, having the theatrical devices helped me get on stage and do them.
And that was a shyness?
Yeah, it was really. I never really felt like the natural performer, you know. I wasn't an outrageous person at heart. I was actually a very quiet little Capricorn boy, you know. And it seemed that I could get a kickstart to having to perform by, you know, working within the functions of characterization. This last 2 or 3 years, I've just thoroughly enjoyed the hell out of just singing the songs that I wrote for all those people. Myself, and just interpreting them myself. And I've got such a wonderful supportive band that I've had now for 8 years. It's just been great. So now, yeah, I'm a writer and I'm also a performer.
Well, looking at that quiet, shy little boy that you described, how did he handle the fame? I mean, the fame really came into focus with Ziggy Stardust and continued. Just got bigger.
I never, ever, at any time, really enjoyed the fame aspect of it. I mean, I never really, at the height of it all, I never used to go out. I hated going out. I wasn't a party guy. I never used to go to parties. I was really a recluse. I'd stay in all the time or creep out to clubs at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I mean, I became a night animal. I just didn't like the fame thing. The getting a table at a restaurant might have been nice if I'd eaten. But I never used to eat in those days. So
you actually wrote, recorded the song Fame.
Yeah.
Lennon worked on that with you.
Yes, he did, yeah.
Tell me about that.
It came out of a conversation that we had. I said, you know, I hate this manager that I've got. What can I do about it? You know, how do I get a new manager? And he said, stop right there. No management. You don't need management. I mean, he was the first artist I'd ever met who told me that I didn't need management, that it was not necessary, you know. And bless him, forever after that, I did get rid of that manager, and I virtually managed myself my entire life. I've had business advisors and all that, but the idea of management has never crossed my path again since 77-ish.
But was that an exciting thing for you, to work with John Lennon?
75, rather. Hell, I mean, he was one of the major influences on my musical life. I mean, I just thought he was the very best of what could be done with rock and roll. And also ideas, how he was so... I mean, I felt such kin to him in as much as that he would rifle the avant-garde and look for ideas that were so on the outside, on the periphery of what was the mainstream, and then apply them in a functional manner to something that was considered populist and make it work. He would take the most odd idea and make it work for the masses. And I thought that was just so admirable. I mean, that was like making art work for the people and not sort of having it as an elitist, you know, thing. There was just so much about him that I admired. He was tremendous, you know.
Living in Los Angeles in the 70s has often been described as a lost or depressed period for you, if not dominated by cocaine, then certainly deeply affected by it.
Yeah.
What are your own standout memories of that time without inviting me?
There are no standout memories of Los Angeles.
Well, what's your perspective looking back?
Just, again, function. You know, I guess, you know, a lot of it had to have been my trying to function behind what really was an extremely shy, reclusive kind of personality that I had. And I kind of probably, like most people who get deeply involved in drugs, it was, I felt that it probably helped me break out of, you know, my inhibitions, you know. But of course it doesn't. It just throws you into a real quagmire of psychic and emotional hell, really. It just brings out or creates awful traumas for you, you know. But I had no idea of that, obviously.
What would you say? What would you say it cost you in personal terms?
Oh, it cost me a lot of years where I could have spent them in a very different way, you know, and had a healthier and more fulfilling kind of... I mean, I think the work that I did during that period was surprisingly really good, you know, I mean...
But what you don't know is what you might have been doing.
Yeah, yes, the thing is, you know, so many people, especially, it's fashionable to say, well, you wouldn't have been able to write those things if you weren't on drugs and all that, you know, and I just doubt that's really the truth at all, because I think some of the best things that I wrote at that period, I'd already cleaned up, and so I think that disproves that point.
I think when you interviewed as much as you've been and quoted as much as you've been, it's perhaps a little unfair to bring back past quotes, particularly from that period. But I was...
Are we ever going to get to the present?
I was staggered when I read a quote from a Rolling Stones interview that you gave at the time saying, "I believe very strongly in fascism. We need a dictatorial right-wing tyranny." What was that about?
I think that was probably a bit coke-driven.
Yeah.
It was also part of... I fell into the trap of the black magic... Kabbalism and the whole idea of just the Crowleyism of, you know, the times. It was a significant part of that middle point of the 70s, and I really got completely disoriented by all that. It was an awful, dreadful period for me. I mean, the only escape for me in the end was just to get up and clean myself out, you know, and just finish my association with cocaine, which had become such a problem that I couldn't function in any other way from day to day. I wasn't eating, I couldn't eat anything. I mean, if you've seen photographs of me in that period, I mean, I weighed, I don't know, 95 pounds or something. It was just dreadful. I'm absolutely amazed that I actually survived that period.
You did come through it, obviously, and you continued to produce groundbreaking music through the 70s.
We're only in the late 70s. And
we're getting
I think we've got to stop in a minute.
We're getting there. But it's commonly accepted that you lost your artistic thread in the 80s, and I've seen you describe it as your Phil Collins period. What happened there?
Poor old Phil. I tell you, that's the trouble when you become a symbol for something. And Phil, in this particular case, is somebody who really achieved an unknown kind of popularity with the mainstream at that particular time. So I'm just using you as a symbol, Phil. Yeah, I mean, Let's Dance absolutely took me by complete surprise. I mean, I had no idea that I would ever achieve that kind of popularity in a mainstream kind of arena. And I just didn't know what to do with it. I suddenly doing tours, the like of which I'd never done before, playing stadiums, not clubs and theatres, you know, and it was like...
Heady in its own way?
It was heady, but on the other hand, it was kind of scary, because I thought, what do I follow this up with, you know, what do I do? And I wrote 2 albums where I felt I really pandered to an audience, tried to meet the audience's expectations, what I believed they wanted, and I think they were artistically disastrous because of that. Looking at other artists, contemporaries, which I had to do to see if I was alone out there, I see I'm not the only one that made some blunders over a 35-year career.
Well, it'd be miraculous
but
if you
I think
hadn't.
I did okay that I only really made 2 albums that I really think were bad.
and the journey through the 90s to today.
Yeah.
The David Bowie of today is pretty straight in every way, I read recently, content with reality that you're no longer the trailblazer?
I hope that I'm somebody that other artists could look to as maybe someone who's learned how to ride the full curve of having some kind of longevity in their chosen profession, you know. I'm still writing and producing the music that I've always wanted to. And I still have a very loyal audience. I don't think life could be better for me, and I think I'm a good example.
And legacy. How would you like your legacy written?
I'd love people to believe that I really had great haircuts.
No problem there.
Oh yeah? I got the photos that prove otherwise.
They're still hanging on a lot of walls, I think, around the world.
No, they're still hanging on a lot of heads as well.
Seriously.
Well, for good or better or worse, I think maybe the idea of opening up your possibilities. I mean, just speaking strictly in terms of music, I think being able to look to all kinds of music and being able to draw from all those kinds of music, to be able to cross-fertilate ideas, to kind of hybridize things and try to mix it up and present a richer and really widen a musical culture that's already pretty rich, but to make it even more extravagantly questioning and proud and savagely energetic. I think that would be nice.
And a question that you possibly can't answer: how much of Davy Jones is left in the David Bowie of 2004? Can you remember him?
I think there's an awful lot of David Jones there, yeah. I think you'd finally become the man you always should have been. I really believe that. And I think now that I'm probably truer to my real nature now than I have ever been at any time in my life. Except maybe for when I was about 8 or 9 when I first heard Little Richard.
And you're pretty comfortable with that?
Yeah, I am very comfortable with that, thank you, yeah.
David Bowie, thanks for talking with us.
Thanks.
What made me want to do a British sitcom? Well, as you probably know, my background's in serious acting before I started doing the writing, singing thing, and so something like doing the extras is a piece of cake for me, really. And it was fun working with Rick, showing him pointers, maybe new ways of approaching comedy that he hadn't really thought about before, I think. When we came up with the idea of doing a song, he said he would do the lyrics with Stephen, and I said that would be great, I'd love that to happen, and I'd do the melody, but then I'd give him some jokes for future episodes of extras. So I gave him a couple of my better things. There's one that I think he's doing in the Sir Ian McKellen show. It's yeah, you and whose army? Which, you know, it's like, that's an example, the kind of thing that I've got. And there were a couple more. If you keep looking like that, your face will stay like it. That's really quite a zinger, isn't it? And that kind of thing, you see. So, you know, I've been writing jokes for him. And he assures me they'll be in the future episodes. So it's been very fulfilling, this whole experience.